Welcome, Marvel Future Fight fans. Today's video is going to be about using filters and building teams. So, some people know how to build teams, other people do not. There are different things to consider when you're trying to build your teams. Not only what you're building them for, but the different types of positions that exist within the team. Now, something you can do is you can preset up teams for clearing content. For example, one of the more popular ones is this Rogue team, if of course you have Rogue at tier 4. And basically you have this set dealer option here where you can click it and you can click which one you want to be the dealer and you get this little cool sword icon here. What happens with this is basically when your characters start and they're auto clearing levels, it's going to automatically switch to your dealer. So if you have like a different team set up with a different type of leadership, like something like this for my PvP team, you'll see sentries in the leadership position, but Adam has the sword icon for the dealer. So all of that stuff is going to play in when you're doing autoplay. Now manually playing of course is different, but this is of course with your autoplay game modes. You'll also notice on the right hand side something new that they've recently added, nice quality of life, is the type of bonuses you're getting from this team. So there's this all effect options and you can click it and see what sort of all effects are going across the board. Team bonus. So by having certain characters together, you get sort of bonuses and amplifications and boosts based upon using certain characters together. You have team gear. You have team uniforms and team passives, and then there's, of course, the leadership role itself. You have different reasons to build different teams. We don't need to go over all the different types, but just be aware, like, see this right here? I do not want dealer for Phil Coulson. I would want to switch that to Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange happens to have a leadership ability, as well as being the main damage dealer with a double support. You don't always have to go with a leadership and double support. Sometimes you want to build up teams, especially depending on the types of game modes that you're playing. Example of that would be some of the world boss legendary stuff that you'll see. So if you're going through here and you go to the challenges and you get a world bosses and you get a world boss legendary, there are characters that are very difficult to play against, like Black Swan. Black Swan's very limited on some of the characters that she can use. So if I crank this up to 19, which is the highest I currently have unlocked, and I go into here and I say that I'm ready, I have this team here where I have Odin's leadership, I have Thor, and then I have Magneto. Magneto is doing nothing on the team. He's being carried through. So you might be like, but why are you using Odin's leadership? If you know anything about Odin right now, he's been basically replaced by Thor at this point. Thor outscores him, both being tier 4 characters, both with really good builds. So basically, by having his lightning damage leadership and using him in the leadership role, I can focus on Thor, but if I have to switch, I can switch to Odin, who also does great damage dealing. So the leadership is actually helping both with a person I'm trying to carry through. Yes, Magneto, for good accounts, tier 4 Magneto, especially the way I have him built for AB with a brilliant rage. He should be able to clear this. My account is struggling on clearing Black Swan 19, so I'm using Thor right now as the only clear that I have, even though I've messed with a lot of these other characters. But the main reason that I'm bringing this up is the idea that you can swap between characters for certain stages, like World Boss Legendary. Most of your game modes, like AB, you're going to want to have a leadership and support characters, either double support with a self-lead, which is ideal, or you have a leadership character with your main damage dealer and a support character. Now, support abilities come from multiple locations. The first location is going to be passives. Now, passives are basically like what Valkyrie has here. So I go over here to skills and I go here to the passive. This is going to apply to all allies just by being on the team. It's just a passive ability that just affects everyone. The other one, of course, is the leadership role where they have to be in the leadership position. But there's also uniform support abilities. Based upon the characters you're using, by having them on the team, their uniform are going to do different types of amplifications as well. And I'm trying to think if I have one off the top of my head. That is going to be a good example. I probably should have prepared one first. I know, like, for example, I'm pretty sure Thing has a uniform one. So I know recently Thing for the Fantastic Four. So he should have one. So if I search for Thing here and I go to the uniform list and I go under the uniform effects, you'll see here, this is just by the uniform. This works like a passive. So all Fantastic Four allies are going to get this 25% increase. And then you have other ones like I probably could have worked with Proxima Midnight would be another example. There's many people who have uniform effects. So all supervillains on the team, regardless of where they are, leadership role or not, these passives are very important to keep in mind. There is also, of course, a specific custom gear that will affect everyone as well. So having a CTP of Insight on a support character because they're not going to be the main damage dealer, gives another passive support. Then there's artifact supports that come into play as well. If I can find M'Baku real quick, I know he has a really good one. Actually, Valkyrie also has one, so we'll just pull her back up again since she's on this team that I'm using. So her artifact is going to also increase to all allies, and it's a passive as well. Thing to keep in mind with artifacts, type matches are beneficial because if you look here, it does this increase basic damage dealt to bosses by 11% and an additional 0.2% of total instinct. So having the extra instinct that matches with her, as far as I understand, having an instinct match, and of course having a higher star as well as working up the artifact is all going to play into that. So there's a lot of different places that support comes into when you're trying to build teams. So if you're playing against teams and wondering why you're losing in PvP, or if you're trying to build the best team to be the meta, most effective tactic available for something like AB, it's important to understand why. Because if you only can build based upon what your account has versus building the meta because you just can't keep up with it because it's expensive, you need to understand what choices you can make based upon what your account is capable of doing. Now, another really cool feature in this game, in the top left-hand corner here, we have a filter. So you can filter by support characters. So every single one of these characters that are popping up are considered to be the quote-unquote in the support role. Now, a support character is going to have a support based upon a passive, an artifact, a uniform, or a combination of those, and some of them will have leadership abilities. And there will be other characters that are not technically considered support characters that might also have passive support ability as well. So when you're looking through some of these, you might be like, whoa, what makes this person a support? So I would advise you to go through and dig through some of them and understand why they're supports. Take, for example, Storm. Storm has recently been replaced by Rogue and Cable in ABL, but she used to be ABL meta. She deals a lot, and she's definitely very, very much a glass cannon, which means she dies easily, but she deals a lot of damage, is basically what I'm getting at. But she also has this uniform effect here, which only affects herself. So it's like, okay, there's no support ability there. So where's her support ability if she's mainly just going to be this character that just self-buffs, right? So self-buff an artifact. We have a self-buff on the uniform, but you will see some people putting the custom Gear of Insight on her. That's under her skills. A lot of people don't pay attention. Now here's the main passive, right? The passive from getting to tier 2. That's why I say the main passive, the one at the top. It's not necessarily classified as the main passive, but she only gets this when she hits tier 2. There is another passive, however. This passive is just her being on the team, period, with this particular uniform, Eye of the Storm. All allies are going to ignore target's dodge rate by 30% and increase damage to all elemental damage by 55%. That means any elemental character you're using, whether it be Jean Grey or Thor, Beta Ray Bill, Odin, Human Torch even, any of the characters that are doing elemental damage, actually Scarlet Witch does mind damage, so she's actually part of this as well, it is going to increase that elemental damage they deal by 55%. And an ignore dodge just by being on the team. That's why she's there. Again, leadership is like not something we typically talk about, but out of all of her passive stuff, there's this passive down here. So it's actually worth going through some of these and saying, well, where is the support buff? Go to the uniform, go to both passives, and go to the artifact. Try to see if you can figure it out. Oh, that's self. That doesn't do anything. Oh, I'll go over here to skills. What's this? There it is. All allies, increase basic damage dealt. Still go through the other ones just to make sure you understand that this is a self one. On this case, it's the tier 2 ability that does the buff and support ability. It's not the other passive, and it's not, well, I don't have her artifact. I can't remember what artifact does off the top of my head. But she actually also has a self lead, so she's a leadership as well as, see, self increase all basic damage to 45%. So she has a self lead option with a passive support ability. And I have her at tier 4 with the Rage because right now she does outscore Green Goblin with the Red Goblin uniform. So she is right now meta for ABX. She doesn't outscore him by a lot, so it's probably not something I would advise doing, building her to tier 4, but even without her being tier 4, she makes a great support character. And having her as tier 4 also allows me to use her against Black Swan. So there's all these different things to consider and to look into when building your team. So that's the whole point of the support function, that each one of these characters has some form or method of supporting. Actually, since we were just talking about Green Goblin with the Red Goblin uniform, he is a self-lead and a support character, and people do not realize that he has support capabilities because he's typically used by himself for ABX meta. Again, Mystique, I think for the average account does about 1 to 3 million more, depending on which person's accounts, what they're like. For me, I outscore my Red Goblin by 1 million. It's not a lot, and like I said, it's not necessarily worth building Mystique, but you have that option. Not only does he have self-leadership, so you could put him in a leadership role, have him as leader passive, and swap to a different character if you really wanted to. This passive is a self-passive. This passive is the one, it's a tier 2 passive, supervillain allies. 45%, 45% for supervillains and superheroes for damage dealt. Damage dealt is very good. It's one of the preferred support options for most people. Not always. Damage dealt, basically, after you've gotten through everything, all defenses, all dodges, and you actually hit and do actual damage, that damage dealt is now amplified by 45%. That's why damage dealt is nice, because all attack is buffing it all before all the dodges and defenses and everything, so it can be prevented. So it depends on where you're getting the boost at. So a lot of people like damage dealt. I like damage dealt. So yeah, it's very interesting to look through these characters and find out why. Now, some of them are niche, like Rocket Raccoon over here is only going to work with certain teams, so you have to be aware. Guardians of the Galaxy, so this passive, again, not a tier 2 passive, Guardians of the Galaxy allies are going to get a 40% energy increase. There's nothing else he does, as far as I know. Yep, see self on the tier 2 passive, self on the uniform, and I have his artifact, but it's self. So the only thing he's doing, the reason he's considered a support character by that filter, is this Guardian of the Galaxy allies. So if you don't have a Guardians of the Galaxy ally, you know, going over to info, going to detail, and seeing what group that they're with, right? Guardians of the Galaxy under abilities. If they don't have that icon, doesn't get the bonus from that skill, so it's worthless to put them on that team. So yeah, understand support characters, figure out what they're for. You might see some unusual ones that you typically don't use, but if you're looking to build up teams, you want some more options, and you want to build stronger teams, understand how they're helping the team when they're in there. Dealers are typically going to be the ones that are actually doing the damage itself, and they usually have some sort of big buff thing that they're dealing out. And you'll see support characters in here as well, because they kind of double up as both supports and dealers. But dealers are usually the one you're going to swap to deal the damage. This list is not a good list, in my opinion. The support's nice because you can kind of build what you want everywhere else. But if you don't really understand the meta or the best characters to build, if you were to look at this list, I did not mean to click, I was trying to scroll. And yeah, so my mouse is acting funky on my emulator here. If you scroll down here, if you build White Tiger or Rhino or Hulkling, you are wasting your materials. Just because they're on this list does not mean that they should be used as a dealer. Even though they have the ability to deal damage, that's very loosely used. I would avoid that, and I would learn from other people. Leadership, of course, just means they have some sort of a leadership buff from their leadership ability. There's a lot of characters that have leadership buffs. Some of them, it's kind of like almost pointless to have in a leadership position, but a lot of these characters, some of them are going to have Rad remove all debuffs, so they're meant for PvP, like Sentry and Jean Grey. So as an example, helps if I actually click Sentry, go to the skills here, you go to the leadership position here, and this is Rad, removes all debuffs. So basically, if your character is debuffed, you know, if they're webbed up, or they're time frozen, or their defenses are down, anything that takes away and makes them weaker is a debuff. Removing that every 12 seconds is almost critical for PvP at this point. So there's things like that. And there's going to be some characters, like I said, some of their skills are just 24% all attack for the leadership. That's not going to be as good as some of these. Like Magneto has a fantastic one specifically for mutants, and he's a self-lead because he's meta. So, you know, mutant allies increase all basic attacks by 50%. Again, are they mutants? You have to go here. Mutants in this case is going to be under allies. It's not going to be one of the abilities below. You'll see mutant here. So yeah, do some research. There's some leadership abilities there. Upgradable heroes, available, unavailable. These are other filters, like which characters do I have available to be upgraded. I've pretty much upgraded everyone I could. Characters that are available, I have everyone but the brand new character, Cassandra, I believe her name is. So Cassandra Nova, we're going to get, she just recently came out, so she's going to be free for everyone, so I'm just going to wait to get her for free. But yeah, I've got every character besides for in the game, all 269 characters. So yeah, the filters, like I said, go through support, go through dealer, go through leadership. Actually, don't even worry about dealer. I'm sorry. Go through leadership and support, get a basic idea to help start building teams and understanding why teams are built. And if people make recommendations, you might have a better idea of why they're making the choices they're making. So if you have limitations on your account, working with what you have available, this is going to help you immensely, hopefully. So if you like this video, if you like any of my videos, consider interacting, commenting, liking. Tell the algorithm you like my stuff, and I'll continue to make content. I'm probably going to make it whether you like it or not anyway. But yeah, tell me you like it. It makes me feel better. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.